The Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, says he's a firm believer in capital punishment. Speaking at Thursday's post-cabinet media briefing, the Prime Minister revealed that government has been working with the former Attorney General to ensure they meet the standards set out by the Privy Council when it comes to implementing the death penalty. Karen Kozier-Phillip has more.
In response to a question over the recovery of the body of WPC Nyasha Joseph, the Prime Minister said the country is traumatized by the crime scourge. He said it seems as though the solution to every person's problems nowadays is to kill and kill in the most gruesome way. Dr. Rowley further made his feelings known on the implementation of the death penalty.
And I'm making no apologies to anybody in this country for what I'm going to say here. I am a firm believer in capital punishment. And it is not as a result of any deterrent. It is the punishment for the crime.
The Prime Minister noted that the Attorney General's office has put in place a tracking process to try to ensure the Pratt and Morgan standards set by the Privy Council are met so that persons guilty of heinous crimes will pay the ultimate penalty in law.
In order to ensure that we are properly guided by that, I, as Prime Minister, have communicated openly with former Attorney General Ramesh Maraj, who has provided a pathway for the Office of the Attorney General to make sure that what exists now can be utilized to ensure that persons who are doing to us what they are doing to us, that at least some of them will have their day in court. And at the end of that day, if they are unsuccessful in their escape, they will face the penalty laid down in law in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is my story.
In 1999, when Mr. Maharaj was this country's Attorney General, crime boss Dole Chedi and his gang, as well as convicted killer Anthony Briggs, were hanged. Briggs was the last person to be hanged in this country. The Privy Council in Pratt v. Morgan and the Caribbean Court of Justice laid down the general rule that the death penalty should be implemented within 5 years of conviction. Karen Kozier-Phillip, C News.
And joining us on the phone is former Attorney General Ramesh Maraj. Good evening, Mr. Maraj.
Good evening to you and good evening to the listeners and viewers.
Could you refresh our memory about the Pratt and Morgan case and how it impacted the death penalty?
Well, when I became the Attorney General, I recognized that we had to carry out the death penalty because it was the law of the land. And we did carry out the death penalty, and the Prime Minister communicated with me, and I submitted to him a plan drafted by Mr. Peter Pursglove, a senior counsel, who worked with me, and we carried out the death penalty. And in that plan it showed that if it is that there is a tracking system of the murder cases from the time a person is convicted to the time he exhausts all his rights of appeal, the appeal process can be finished in 3.5 years. And therefore I showed the Prime Minister that if the government had the will to carry out the death penalty, this can be done. I actually spoke to the gentleman, Mr. Peter Pursglove, senior counsel, recently, who is based in London. And I have persuaded him that if the government wants him to assist in carrying out the death penalty, he'll be prepared to assist the government. I myself, I am prepared to assist because I think the country comes first. And I think that if the law of the land is being frustrated, and I presented this information to the Prime Minister pro bono, I have not charged any professional fees for it because I think that the time has come in Trinidad and Tobago for the law to be carried out. If the law is not carried out, the criminals would believe that they have free hand in order to commit crimes.
Now, there are those who argue that the death penalty is not a deterrent for crime. I guess you share thoughts otherwise.
Well, I think that is not correct because if you check back to the history of Trinidad and Tobago, when the death penalty was carried out during the period of time I was there, you would see that the crime went down. And I think it is an effective deterrent. And I think common sense would show that if it is that someone who is committing murders can think that he can escape the law and he can spend the time fighting constitutional motions and appeal processes, I think the crimes would continue, and therefore the government has to show a very firm hand, whether it is death penalty or whatever punishment, that the criminals who commit the crimes would face the time. Hello?
Good evening, Mr. Maharaj. Thank you so very much for taking the time to speak with us regards to the death penalty.
Thank you very much.